going to do a Q&A at some stage, so if you have questions along the way, I think we have 25 minutes. I think we'll probably do it in maybe 10 or 15 minutes, and then we can finish out that way if you want, or we can go back to talking. So we'll start with introducing everyone to the speakers. So we'll start with Scott, since he's furthest away. So Scott, if you'd like to tell us a bit about Charity Water.
Sure.
And
we're a nonprofit based in New York City. We're about 9 years old, and we have worked in 24 different countries trying to help people get clean and safe water to drink. About 660 million people in the world are drinking dirty water, and we trying to change that. So we've helped about 6 million people over the last 9 years in about 17,000 villages.
And John?
Yeah, I'm with Kamara Education. So Kamara Education supports schools deliver a better education through the use of ICT. We operate in East and Southern Africa, the Caribbean, and also here in Ireland. Over the last 10 years, we've given 1 million kids digital literacy through training 18,000 teachers and installing over 60,000 computers. So yeah, we're working with schools to give a better education to their kids.
And Jessica?
Hi, I'm with CrowdMed, and we're a startup company in San Francisco that gives patients a place to post their symptoms for their unsolved medical cases and get them solved online through crowdsourcing. So we've been able to solve cases that have stumped the traditional medical system. Our average patient has already seen 8 doctors, has been undiagnosed for 7 years, and has spent on average $70,000 trying to get an answer and getting nowhere. And then they come to our site, and we're able to get them closer to a cure within sometimes a matter of weeks or days.
So I think our 3 speakers have very practical aims in their work, but they're different aims, and they're being done in different ways, through crowdsourcing, fundraising, and then boots on the ground stuff, But what are the challenges at the moment? I mean, we talked backstage a bit about the practical challenges of getting the attention of people, although we've done okay today. But what are the practical challenges with charity work or social work at the moment?
So for me, the big challenge, and it was covered in the main stage a couple of days ago, is that there's a gap on data for development. So there's been billions of pounds, euros, dollars spent on international development over many decades, and to a large degree, we actually don't know if those projects are actually successful. So this is a major problem. I mean, we're in the Web Summit here. We've data coming out of our ears, and yet in the development sector we don't have that, and we need to fix that. One project, for example, we're doing in Kenya, 200 schools. I can tell you today how these kids in Kenya are using technology to improve literacy and numeracy. Literally snapshot from this morning to lunchtime, and this is absolutely essential that this kind of data-driven development is kind of rolled out across not just the ICT and education space, but across the development sector. Because without this data, we've all these reports of computers aren't good for education, or all these people can challenge what we do. So it's really a challenge to ourselves as an industry to get that data and to push that out into the public domain, so that we can actually prove that the work that we do actually is having the impact that we know it is when we're on the ground.
And Scott, there's not the same arguments about clean water as there is about using computers to educate people, but still there's a need for data to show how your work is being done. I mean,
yeah, I think I completely agree with that. In our case, we have 9 years ago, no NGOs in the water space were actually telling people where their water programs were. So there wasn't data. There was a guy that stood up at a conference once and said that he had spent $50 million through his foundation funding water projects, and he didn't know where any of them were. So for us, the simple thing at the beginning was just to use Google Earth and Google Maps and train every partner that we would ever fund to just simply take pictures in GPS, so at least we would know where the projects were, and then make them publicly transparent. So you guys today could go buy a 50 euro handheld device and go visit 17,000 charity water projects. We've made that entire data set public. We do have people go to their wells. It's normally a good result. Every once in a while, we had some guy that biked across the country, and he turned up at his well in northern Uganda, and it wasn't functioning. And he wrote us, and we were able to send a team out there. So the thing that we're probably most excited about is 3 years ago, we went to Google and pitched them this idea. what if we could develop a remote sensor that we'd be able to put in not only our 17,000 water points, but there's 1 million AfriDev wells in Africa alone. And could we make this thing for $100? And could we power it? And could we transmit? And could it stand up to the temperature fluctuations? So we spent about, Google gave us a $5 million grant. We spent about 3 years working on that. We now have a working sensor after developing with 20 different labs. And we have 70 working in Ethiopia right now. So we're getting data from 70 water points, and we're about to install 4,000 over the next 9 months. So for us, that's really important. What are our functionality rates? They're about 86% in Ethiopia, which we know from just visiting 4,000 water points, guys on motorcycles over the last 12 months. But that's a pretty inefficient way to do it, is to drive out to 4,000 water points. So if a sensor for $100 could just send a GPS ping, it'll save us a lot of time and really increase the transparency, we think, for the whole sector.
And Jessica, with CrowdMed, it's different.
Yeah, we have a different issue, and that's getting people comfortable with the idea of having a crowd give them diagnostic suggestions. There's this assumption that you go to an individual expert and they know everything. They'll have all the answers, and that's who you turn to. And so patients will go to their physician, and when that physician doesn't have the answers, they get referred to another doctor, and they keep going through this same process over and over again, which, as you can imagine, is incredibly expensive, incredibly time-consuming. As I mentioned earlier, our average patient has already done this for years. So the thought of them having gone through that process and finding out that, well, actually, you can post your symptoms online, get connected to people all over the world who work together to solve your case, it's a surprise, a pleasant surprise, but it's also something you need to get used to, because one of the really cool things about our site is that our community of case solvers is made up of not only medical professionals, but also non-medical professionals. Half of them work in their study medicine, half of them don't. And by working together, they're outperforming the traditional medical system. And that is a surprise for a lot of people I tell that to, explain that to, because they're thinking, well, I don't want just any old person working on my case. But it turns out by removing that requirement for having the case solver work in our study medicine, we're able to capture the wisdom of patients who have gone through these rare or difficult to diagnose conditions themselves. And they are more expert in their condition than any doctor they talk to, because they're living it. And they've done all that research, not only on the condition they ended up being diagnosed with, but on every other condition they thought they might have. So they become very good at helping other patients diagnose similar conditions to theirs, and then giving them advice on what to do next and the process that they went through in their own experience. So we've given them a platform to share this knowledge, all this work that they've put into getting themselves closer to cure, they can now spread to other people and help and prevent other patients from going through what they went through themselves. Prior to our site, patients would do this all on their own, in the dark, individually, and that information, all that hard work and research, would end with their case. Now it doesn't have to.
And for you guys, that's one thing that has to be broken down, that people have to get comfortable with this idea that
with the idea that you don't have to go to the expert.
Are there things that you have to make people comfortable with that technology allows that they may not be comfortable, perhaps with ways of donating, that people preferred to have the check and have the stub written out, and now that doesn't really happen anymore?
Yeah, I mean, the technology is easy. The easy part of what we do, it's converting those 18,000 teachers that have sat up in front of a class and used a blackboard and chalk for probably 10, 20 years, and actually give them something, a tool, to say, actually, you can deliver a better geography class this afternoon using this. I mean, it's organizational change, it's motivation. So, that's incredibly challenging. I mean, you talk about what are the big challenges. I mean, the big challenge we were chatting backstage is funding, right? I mean, it's the same for profits, not-for-profits. And, just a month or so ago in New York, the old Millennium Development Goals were ushered out, and the Sustainable Development Goals were brought in to eradicate extreme poverty over the next 15 years. And the easy part is getting the goals. The hard part is actually funding them, right, and where the money's coming from it. And our view is that the traditional funding model is broken, right? So the traditional funding model is you go out to the rich guy on the street and ask him for money, and then you go to the countries that we're working in and do some good projects. We need to find new models of funding international development, especially, and technology is a great way, right, of breaking through that. Like Jess's example here, in terms of it's not requiring very expensive doctors to actually achieve the outcome you want. And one of the pieces that Kamara employ is the concept of social enterprise. So we were talking about Ethiopia. We've delivered e-learning centers in 800 schools over the last 5 years in Ethiopia. And the Ethiopian government gave us $1 million to do that. Now, it cost us about $2 or so million. But the concept that actually, and especially in Africa, where we have these emerging economies, that actually the beneficiary can contribute to the problem. I mean, the other big one that needs to be cracked is how we can get sustainable engagement from the corporate sector, so that it's not just taxpayers paying for the developments we've had. So we need to use technology to find better ways of generating more sustainable funding methods to solve all the problems we're trying to solve.
And Scott, Charity Water puts up big numbers in terms of fundraising, but do you still see problems with the fundraising model as it is, or are there ways that it's not, certain areas of it could work better if people were more in tune with it?
Yeah, I mean, one of the ways that we've been able to, we've had about 1 million donors, so it's really been grassroots. One of the ways that we've raised awareness and money is by asking people to give up their birthdays. So we stumbled onto this maybe 7 years ago and said, look, people don't need more crap. You don't need a tie or a wallet or a handbag on your birthday. And then, let's turn these birthdays into giving moments. So people would ask for their age in euros or pounds or dollars. And we've just seen extraordinary success from this. So 7-year-old kids will go out and raise, $20,000. We've seen 89-year-olds give up their birthday. Tech executives, people from Hollywood, say, look, I'm blessed. I just don't need more stuff in the world. So that's been great. We've actually gotten we've gotten about 20,000 people to give up their birthdays and raise $20 million. So it's a very small percentage. There's 9 million birthdays just in our country every single day. I think one of the challenges for us as we've gotten bigger is, we were talking about this backstage, it starts at 0 every year. So we did not build that kind of repeatable revenue model. So we don't have a monthly giving program. We raised $45 million last year. January 1, I look at my wife and say, oh my gosh, how did we do that? How on earth are we going to do that again, and how are we going to grow? So that's been a big focus of the organization now, is the repeatability of the donations. We just didn't know what a cool monthly giving program looked like at Charity Water, so that's why we didn't do it. There's no kid that you can sponsor that's going to write to you. Water projects cost thousands of dollars, not $10 a month. So we've really been thinking about how do we innovate in that space where January 1, we're not looking at 0, and we've got longer term relationships. I think birthday is great, but you do one, you feel like you've done that, and what's next? So I think we're thinking a lot about lifetime value, a lot about sustainability and of those donations, and not having to go out and get new people all the time.
And I think for all three organizations, there's for everything, there's huge competition for time, for interest at the moment, for money. I mean, you're running 3 very different organizations, but you're all sort of competing against each other in the same way. You all have to grab people's attention to make them use you, whether it's use you for their annual charity give or something that they're going to campaign for or something they're going to use. They could use something else. How do you try and break through that?
Well, so the way we work is we're direct to patient, and patients pay a small fee to the community who helps solve their case. So they pay this reward at a minimum $200, and patients have posted anywhere from $200 to $10,000, because if you've been spending hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to get an answer and getting nowhere, and then you get this option that gives you hope again, you're willing to reward the people who help you with that. So patients have been posting pretty decent rewards, and right now, that's great for the patients who can afford to do that, but for a lot of patients, $200 is asking a lot, especially if they've lost a lot to their illness, if they've been undiagnosed for years and have lost their job because they can no longer continue to work. So we've actually partnered with Indiegogo to help our patients launch crowdfunding campaigns. So it's crowdfunding to fund crowdsourcing and help them raise enough money to post a case so that there's a reward to the medical detectives who are helping them solve it.
And John, how do you?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it goes back to what I was saying in terms of the pot isn't big enough, right? So, you know, you're right. I mean, if you're into company X and you're in, you know, they might go for water, they might go for, you know, ICT and education, they might go for homelessness, who knows? And they're all really valid cases. But the big thing is, that I think as a society, we need to look at what is that pot. And at the moment, if you look at the split, there's a huge amount of that pie, if you like, is state funding, you know, and, you know, we need more corporate engagement. We need, you know, we need to look at what value our organizations can contribute to the bottom line of companies, in a sense. So we're a great partner for tech companies, right? Because 1 million kids are now digitally literate, so they're going to be on Facebook and Google and all these things. So of course, you know, they're looking at us going, you know, how can we take 1 million and do 100 million, you know? And there's a new concept, right? That actually is, it won't be the token CSR pot that we might get. It might actually be a significant investment to actually, over the long term, I suppose, give the return to the company. So we need, you know, we don't want to squabble over this pot. We want to actually try and make the pot bigger through all these innovative kind of ideas, so that we can reach, you know, more people and have the impact. Because, you know, extreme poverty is halved in the last 15 years. So we're making incredible progress. But I guess, like most things, the first half is the easy half, right? And I suspect the next 15 years is going to be a lot tougher. So we can't be doing what we did over the last 15 years and expect to get there.
Scott, you've had some engagement with Google and the big corporates about getting them to give and work with Charity Water. Are they generally quite open to that? They seem, you know, they like to be benign or seen to be benign companies. Are they open to this sort of work?
Yeah, I mean, we're really focused on individuals. So when we work with a company, it's typically to reach their customers and their employees. It's not the CSR dollars. It would be a consumer engagement or a marketing campaign. I think Google's an exception. It was an innovation grant for this one very specific hard thing to do. I think they just liked how challenging this was, and it turned out we gave them bad news for 3 years, basically. And I think because we were transparent, it was okay. We finally got it done. So, you know, one of my favorite stories is we're working with a group of 500 dental offices, and these dentists have taken Charity Water into their company, and all of these dental groups, as you come in to get your teeth cleaned, they start talking about Charity Water. And they've raised like $2.5 million, but by engaging tons of people. So I think it's those unlikely partnerships that's way more interesting for us than the owner of the dental company writing a $2 million check out of some foundation or out of some pot. So for us, it's really, I remember reading a study years ago that looked at, 1 million nonprofits in the States, and it was over a 30-year period, and it wanted to see how many of them got big. And it called big 50 million a year in run rate, so not even that big. They found 144 had gotten to scale. And they looked at those 144, and they were expecting to see very diverse revenue streams, you know, people that were good at corporations and foundations and individuals and governments. And they found the opposite. They found the ones that had gotten big really doubled down on one thing, so they focused. So for us, that focus is individuals. It's 6-year-old kids that can sell lemonade, you know, 12 weekends in a row and raise a couple $1,000, or wealthy individuals that could write $1 million check or a $10 million check. But it's not been government, it's not been foundations, and when we work with companies, it's to get at individuals.
Do we have any questions? One, yeah. Do we have a microphone? Yeah, should be coming around you now.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Julie. I work at the IKEA Foundation. We donate more than 100 million euros every year to help children living in poverty. And my question to you guys would be, what arguments do you have for other corporates to invest and put people and children first, or sustainability at the core of the business?
IKEA is amazing. Say hi to Per Hegnes. You guys have just done a lot of great work in Ethiopia through one of our partners. So I'll let you take how you work with corporates.
I didn't actually catch the full question. Sorry.
What more can corporates do to make this sort of work part of their core focus?
Yeah, so well, I think for me, I mean, you know, there has to be win-win, right? Like any relationship, right? So if this is all give from a corporate, you know, I think that will be fine to a point. So really what I was saying around, you know, in our scenario, the tech companies, how can we find a way that supports their underlying objectives? And I think that's one option. It's like anything; you have to have a strong case study. So you have to be very credible, compelling, to actually show that there's demonstrable value for the organization. Otherwise, you will be kind of sidelined into the CSR pot. IKEA, I completely agree with Scott, amazing organization and really, responsible like that. So it's in their case quite a significant pot, but a lot of organizations it's not.
We're actually working with companies to have them provide CrowdMed as a employee benefit. So that's one way companies can work with us to help their team stay healthy and get to cure faster so that they can get back to work and everyone can be happy.
Any more questions? Oh, yeah, one up the front.
Rosa from the Coder Dojo Foundation. I just want to ask, bar funding, is there any other kind of difficulties or barriers you've come across in being social innovators, I suppose?
We'll take Jessica first.
Sorry, what was that?
Bar funding, is there any other barriers that you've come across in being social innovators?
I mean, aside from challenging that idea that crowdsourcing is a viable option for complex problems, for us trying to get in front of the right people, since we do mainly deal with rare or difficult to diagnose diseases, finding those people has been a challenge for us. We want to help them. They're out there. There's a lot of them. It's just a matter of, one, getting to know about CrowdMed, and then two, getting them comfortable with the idea of having tons of people all over the world working on their case. They do so anonymously, but it's still something to get used to.
And John, what's
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could spend probably half an hour telling you about the challenges we have. We're chatting backstage about Ethiopia alone. Getting stuff done in some of these countries is incredibly tough. I mean, all the time, I mean, you're just throwing these things from left field. I mean, the OECD released a report last month saying that in the majority of projects, ICT didn't have a positive impact on education. We actually agree with that. The reason is most projects just throw technology at schools and expect this magic to happen, and of course it doesn't. It's hard work and working through teachers and all that has the impact. But then, of course, all the media pick up the headline going, computers don't help education. And we're out there talking to anyone that will listen about what we do. So yeah, I mean, but I think it came up on a talk earlier in the center stage about persistence, and sticking the course, and that's really important. And that comes back to belief and what is inside you that drives every one of us and lots of other people here, and for us that's, poverty is just unacceptable and we need to eradicate it, and no report or anything else is going to take us off that line, and we're going to stick the course and we're going to win,
And Scott, what's the biggest non-funding barrier?
I was thinking back to a long list over 9 years of problems. From droughts to floods to civil conflict to governance issues to our rigs crashing and running off the roads in rural villages, and to dry wells to gosh, I mean it's incredibly difficult working, and we have 1,600 local employees now through our partner networks, and every different country would have a different challenge of implementing sustainable projects. So yeah, it's incredibly challenging, not only just to raise the money and then to implement high quality projects and then the sustainability of them over time. So none of it's easy.
We have time for one more question. So
Good. Following on that, Chris Hewer, Will Someone, good to see you again.
Hey.
So in the operations side, we have cohorts, we have colleagues who are employees in some cases, partners, et cetera. How do you actually structure a global organization to work with all these different types of individuals, the relative interest and what have you, to work together so that you can actually create that impact and get that alignment? Obviously, the purpose and the passion is at the core of it, but how do you tactically do that further to what you were just talking about?
I think our business model, starting 9 years ago, when we looked around at the water sector, we realized that we were not going to become experts in implementation, but we saw all these great implementers, all these great local partners. They couldn't raise money to save their lives. I mean, our partner in India has been at it for 30 years in Orissa. They have a dial-up internet connection that works 4 days a week. Their website is unbearable. So we really just said, we're going to pick awareness. We're going to try to create awareness about this issue. And no one was talking about the water crisis 10 years ago. No one cared, and it's still very difficult to do that. we're going to raise money, and then we're going to help grow this partner network. So we buy, we bought 40 trucks for our partner in Ethiopia. We've bought millions of dollars of drilling rigs. We've paid for strategic planning, a la McKinsey, for our local partners to have 3 to 5 year strategic plans. So our role is really to come alongside them and grow the locals. We've got 20 people dedicated to that, to the program management, to the vetting, to the auditing. We have independent auditors that go out. So there's a whole rigor on that, but it's not Charity Water sending white people from New York to Southeast Asia or to Sub-Saharan Africa. It's really coming alongside these locals. We helped our partner in Ethiopia hire 300 locals and grow the water program by 400%. But they'd been at it 35 years. I was 5 when they started their organization. So, by a business model approach, I think that's just how we've done it.
Okay, well, I'm afraid that's all we have time for. But before we go, where can people catch you the rest of the Web Summit, the rest of the day, if they can indeed catch you at all?
Well, thanks, by the way, to the Web Summit. We're actually a charity partner and have been for the last 4 years. We have an amazing football-sized pitch stand right outside the exit of the center stage. So we'll be over there for the rest of the afternoon. Do drop by, and we'll show you some real-time results from Kenyan schools and what's happening in Kenyan schools today. So that's pretty cool.
We do not have a stand, but you can find us online.
You can find my site, crowdmed.com, and I will also be on the MedTech stage after this.
Okay, so thanks very much to Jessica, John, and Scott.
Thanks for listening.